Welcome to Unit 6.1. Your assignments are from Goldenberg and Goldenberg, chapters 1 and 2. And then I'm going to send you some information from chapter 1 of Sherman and Dinkmeyer and appendix on page 299 from Sherman and Dinkmeyer. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the main things that come up in these chapters. The first is on page 1. You'll notice that I think the one thing that we forget is we kind of look at the family too often in the past as operating separately from everybody else. And sometimes it's easy to go back to that type of thinking when families seem to become less and less involved with each other, and still we have many immigrant families and many families of other cultures and ethnicities that are more and more involved with each other. So these will be important considerations. One of the things I want you to think about are how a family is shaped by things like race, ethnicity, social class, family life cycle stage, number of generations in this country, sexual orientation, religious affiliation, and the physical and mental health of its members. These things all are related to how the family functions. One of the biggest debates that goes on is between whether you treat the individuals in the family or treat the family as a whole. And we're going to be talking about this as you read and as you go through the systems material that we're going to be reading about. One thing that I always like to point out is on page 9, it's about family resiliency. I have found that in terms of any family I work with, there is always some resiliency that family has done and has used well in surviving and getting along with each other and creating change. So don't underestimate that important piece of information. A couple things I wanted to talk to you about in terms of, excuse me, in terms of terms are, one is the circular causality. And this is the idea that actions are related through a series of recursive loops or repeating cycles. So if you were to think about, I always think about sometimes machinery in this kind of thinking is that, you know, you turn on the key in a car, which goes to an ignition switch, which goes to another switch, which gets the motor running, the pistons moving, the spark plugs, the gas flowing, the water flowing, all the other things that are happening. And each and every time for the car to successfully run, this needs to happen. So it's very important that you understand that circularity continues in a way that's very important to the family. Many times the family also experiences what's called more of a, instead of a circular loop, a linear causality. In other words, A equals B equals C. So a lot of times this happens in families where one member of the family is blamed for everything. So Johnny gets up in the morning, he got up late, he didn't get dressed up in time. He blames it on Mom not waking him up on time, so he goes to have breakfast. Mom has made him a nice bowl of cereal and some toast and fruit juice, and he says, well, it's your fault that I don't have time to eat this. Dad joins in and says, yeah, if you'd gotten him up earlier, maybe this wouldn't happen and he wouldn't be so crabby right now. Next morning, same thing happens. And this is when we see that same pattern happening over and over and over again. And so sometimes this is the pattern that happens when something isn't working very well in the family, such as if you think back to that car, if the electronic system is not working and the electronics the power cannot get to the battery or to the spark plugs, every day you're going to have the same result. The car is not going to start. So this is a big part of understanding this. Another term that I like to talk about is first order cybernetics. And this is the idea that an outside observer can study and make changes in a system while remaining separate and independent of the system. This is important because this is important for us as therapists in some therapies to utilize so that we remain as neutral as possible while trying to assist the family in making their own changes. Now the opposite side of that is what is called second order change. And second order change happens in this basic change in the structure and, second order cybernetics is the idea that anyone attempting to observe and change a system is therefore part of that system. There are many of the philosophies that you will see where it's important for the therapist to join with the family to help them create change. Sometimes to model appropriate behavior. Sometimes to point out behavior that's inappropriate and needs to be changed. And so that's basically your first and second order types of change. At this point, I wanted to talk a little bit about some information from Bittner that I found helpful. And he talks about personal characteristics and orientations of effective family practitioners. And this comes from a lot of research that's been done as to the effectiveness and positive feedback that therapists have gotten. First of all, therapists need to be present. It's some days we all come to work and we're a little less present than others, but it's very important to get started with the family immediately. The second is acceptance, interest, and caring. If we act like we really, we've heard this a million times and it's not really important, the family isn't going to be much interested in change either. The third is assertiveness and confidence. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions as therapists to jump in there and be a part of the change and confront the behaviors that are happening, such as people who are being loud and out of control. We must also look at things like adaptability or openness to change, because one route might not always work for each family member or each family. Another one is listening teleologically, which you're all familiar with. Teleology is the study of final causes and intended future or purposes and goals. And this is something you very much study as Adlerians as an important part of change. Also, working in patterns and holism are a part of understanding those patterns and processes as well. Appreciating the influence of diversity in the family. Having people with various skills and talents and ethnicity and racial qualities and religious backgrounds is very, very important and all need to be recognized. Having a sincere interest in the welfare of others is extremely important, and I don't think I need to say more about that. And tending to the spirit of the family and its members is another one where we again show our caring about the family. The last I want to talk about is involvement, engagement, and satisfaction in working with families. If this is not a route you would like to go because there's going to be some conflict, or you might have to deal with young children, or you don't like conflicting couples, or you don't like dealing with multiple generations of families, this might be something that you need to think about in terms of who you're willing to treat and what else you need to learn about families. So for now we'll close, and that should be it.